everyone. Bill just told you, I'm Kathy Riley, Vice President of the Riverside Alumni Association. I am a Riverside graduate, class of 1963, but many of you know me as Miss Riley, the teacher. But tonight, I am like most of you, someone who has come to honor 5 men for their accomplishments over the years. Before we begin to do that, just a couple of items we would like to take care of. The music was provided by 70 Strings with Carol Ford and Danielle Rush. And Carol said to me immediately, math teacher, I have 36 strings. So how many does Danielle have? Carol is a former music teacher who started her career in the Riverside district, then took time off to raise her family, and when she returned, she finished her career in Madison. But through all this time, she has been a resident of the district and still remains very involved with music. Danielle is one of her private students, but the two have become a performing group. The other item we want to talk about is that we have taken the evening away from the Riverside campus. If you think it was good or a bad decision, or you have suggestions to make improvements in this evening, please let us know. Okay, so now let's begin our program with what has become a tradition. If you are able to stand, please everyone stand as we sing the Halls of Ivy, the Riverside alma mater. The words can be found on the back of your program. As you may have guessed, that was the Riverside Regiment. They made a CD a few years ago under the direction of Dave Schwartz, who just happens to be here this evening. So thank you, Dave, for doing that. As you saw in the booklet, the Hall of Fame was started during the 95-96 school year. Purely by accident, over the years, we have been able to recognize several family relationships. Father-son, father-daughter, uncle-niece, brothers, cousins, and after tonight, our first mother-son relationship. It is always our pleasure to welcome these people back to our events. They have been an integral part of building the history of Riverside. So please help me welcome some of them back tonight. And in the alumni category, we have, she just disappeared. She was just sitting here. Heidi Scope, Toby Hanahan, and Bill Geyer. In the faculty and staff category are, way in the back, Nadine Percival, Carol Benroth over on this side, John Reed sitting right beside her, Gretchen Reed standing back here, Mary Jane Watson, John Weiss, and myself. And now for the reason that we really came this evening, to honor our new inductees. And to do those honors are Mary Jane Watson, Gretchen Reed, and Bill Geyer. So ladies and gentlemen, if you would please take the stand so we can honor these gentlemen.
Before Gretchen begins to honor Joel, I would like to acknowledge a few people who have helped and supported him along the way. So as I call your name, if you will please stand, and everybody take note because you'll all get your turn. Nadine, his mom, please stand. And we know that Harry, his dad, is looking down with a big sense of pride and smiling. We also ask his wife, excuse me, Tracy to stand, and then all of the family and friends who are here to honor Joel. We are all the sum of those we know who have influenced us. Please stand. Thank you.
This is one of those evenings where memories come zooming back into my mind. So I'm going to go back to Madison Avenue, where I lived with my husband for 11 years and would go by the Percival farm, and I would think, there are a lot of animals back there. And I wasn't talking about people. I was talking about the wonderful people who ran a small farm on Madison Avenue. And it is very obvious that it was the entire influence in all of their lives in many ways, but completely in Joel's. Because he, after getting his undergraduate work done at Hiram, he went on to the OSU veterinary school and graduated from there. He worked at 4 clinics and eventually established a small Big Creek clinic of his own and expanded it eventually into 8,000 square feet. He also purchased a clinic in Kirtland and now employs at Big Creek 9 other veterinarians, all of whom are partners with him because that's the way he operates. He said it is a family environment, it always will be, and he only will accept people whom he has known for a long time and have the same spirit of cooperation and love of animals that he does. Other than that, he has 32 employees, and the clinic was recently rated one of the top 20, within the top 20 privately owned veterinarian clinics in the United States. I don't often go online, But this time I felt compelled to discover what that really meant. So I typed in, how many veterinarian clinics are there in the United States? And Google came back immediately and said 45,000. I'm not sure that they're all rated exactly the same, and I don't care if it's 10,000, 20,000, 30. It's in the tens of thousands, and we have one of them here. For those of us who love animals, and we all know who we are, to have that kind of facility to care for those members of our family, which is again how many of us think, is something extremely special. Joel made the point to me that his philosophy is get it fixed today. It doesn't mean that you call there with a problem with your whatever pet and you have to wait. If it's especially important, it will be fixed today. The atmosphere in his clinic is one of warmth and acceptance, and I understand that his staff treats every animal that comes in there as if it is extra special. And you leave there thinking, they think my dog is the cutest they have ever seen, or the most beautiful, or the most lovable, or whatever. It is that kind of atmosphere. So in addition to the numbers that we're dealing with, when you know what his philosophy is, it becomes very special. I asked him about other kinds of pets, like what's the smallest? And he said there are pocket pets. So he treats hamsters, gerbils, guinea pigs, and then we progress to the larger family pets. So we're going in dogs from Chihuahuas to St. Bernards. And then, in addition to those, he has treated llamas, alpacas, bison, lions, and camels. That obviously involves the equivalent of house calls, except they're barn calls and zoo calls. And I believe the significance of this is the vast knowledge that this man has. Think of all the diseases, all the structures that those animals represent, and he knows how to treat all of them, not to mention the pharmaceuticals that go with them. You know, what a nightmare for most of us to even think about, and yet he does it. At RHS, he was an outstanding leader in 4-H and still does 4-H. He was National Honor Society member, Key Club member. He participated in 3 sports, and now he is involved in many animal welfare programs, in addition to others that are regular 501s, charities, etc. So this is a man who is brilliant, compassionate, ambitious, knowledgeable. Speaking of that, I forgot to mention his specialty in equine. He is a nationally recognized expert in equine studies and travels extensively in that regard. In fact, that's why we had trouble getting him here in time for his acceptance into the Hall of Fame last year. He was off taking care of horses, I believe, out west somewhere. So, Joel, please come forward.
That was very glowing, and I'm not sure that I deserve all that, but thank you very much. If you guys are standing here with a dog across from me in the exam room, I could talk all day long, but I'm not very good at this part with everybody here, so do the best we can. First, I would really like to thank all the family and friends that came out to support me tonight. It means so much to me. My two brothers are here, my sister couldn't be here, but her one daughter is here to support me, and other family and other friends, and I really appreciate that. It means so much. I'd really like to give special thanks to my mom and dad, who laid such a foundation for me of always doing the right thing and hard work. And my mom is still at it today, which we all keep telling her to slow down, but she just won't. But she's, and my father really instilled in me that we need to take care of the community. And I've been blessed with people that I've worked with, our staff, all the partners that I have. Everybody embraces community service. And I could stand here from now until tomorrow and tell you all the projects we've been involved in. And it's not just me by any means. Our staff, whatever we come up with, whether it's a homeless family at Christmas or no matter what cockamamie idea I get next, they embrace it, take it forward, and it's really been a pleasure to have the clinics and have people that work for me like that. So any of you that know me know I have a little bit of a chargy personality that doesn't always go over real well, but we get a lot done. And I've been blessed with people around me that keep up and are always moving forward. So I can't say enough about the people that I work with. As far as Riverside High School, they laid a foundation for me of learning, and I want to share just one little story and I'll quit. But at Riverside, for some reason, I got messed up in my math courses, and by the time I became a senior, I hadn't taken trig or calculus, and I thought, boy, I need both those classes, and that's kind of, you shouldn't do that at the same time. And so they didn't want to let me take them, but I got signed up for both of them. And I had Dave Peralt for trig, which was a teacher that's no longer at Riverside, but I still see him. He actually comes in the clinic and I take care of his dogs. And I had Kathy for calculus. And I thought, you know, that I deserved some special dispensation, you know, taking both classes at once. Kathy did not see it that way at all. And I want to say that she challenged me more than anybody else at Riverside ever did. And I am thankful to this day to her for challenging me. When I got to Hiram, you know, we started looking at our requisites that we have to get into vet school. And I just needed one math course, but I thought, you know what, I'll just take this calculus course. I've had that before. I thought, when I went there, I thought I did not know one thing about calculus because she was very hard on us and made us work hard. And I took every calculus course that they had at Hiram and aced them all without studying because what Kathy had taught me. And that's what Riverside did for me, is lay a foundation of learning and some of the things you don't even realize till later on in life, that you've learned some things that maybe you don't even know. But I'm very honored to be here today. I'd like to thank my wife. Tracy, stand up. I was a tad successful before I met Tracy, but everything has been tenfold since I met Tracy. And she's been a positive influence in my life, and daily makes me want to be a better man. So thank you all for being here for us tonight, and I am so honored, and I hope I haven't taken too much time. Thank you.
Hold on, I'm getting there. Juggling cameras over here. Our number photographer's in South Africa. Good, thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Our next inductee is Ted Orris. Mary, his mother, will you please stand? And his brother Dave. and all of Ted's family and friends who are here to support him. Will you please stand?
Back to a long time memory again. When Ted, many years ago, was in my ground aviation class at Riverside, toward the end of the school year, he came up to my desk and he said, "Mrs. Reed, I'm going to be an airline pilot someday." And I know I said something really profound, like, I don't doubt it for a minute. And as simple as that exchange was, I didn't, because he had proven himself already in the year that I had him. In 2005, after a long career that started as at KSU, Kent, in aerospace technology, he was a pilot for a number of smaller companies, and then went on to the highest level. And in a moment, I'm going to hopefully make you appreciate what it takes to get to that highest level. He is now a captain with Southwest Airlines. He's been in aviation for 31 years. He has 25,000 hours of flight time in too many airplanes to count. He is now flying a Boeing 737, 101 cities, 8 countries, and very soon probably overseas flights. Most people have very little understanding of what it takes to become an airline pilot, especially a captain. It is a long, very often thankless slog to the top. It starts with getting a private license, and then if one pursues any higher level, one goes on to an instrument rating, a commercial rating, an instructor's rating, and then you have airplanes that are designated by different weights and engine numbers, single engine, multi-engine. And then when you get through a myriad of those, and every one of those certificates requires classroom time, constant testing, simulator time, actual flight time, and not only is the knowledge, the skill, the endurance, and the discipline tested, but the physical body is too, because along the way, you have to prove that you're healthy. And you have to stay that way in order to keep your license. So that when one gets to the level that Ted has, it is every 6 months a physical. Every little glitch that shows up, hopefully never does, on a screen is the possibility of having your career ended, which means airline pilots mostly just don't let that happen. So there's the exercise, the discipline of eating right, of trying to sleep more often in hotels. As he told me tonight, I'm in a hotel more often than I'm home, and therefore home in Florida is kind of secondary, and probably wouldn't even be that were his mother not there, to whom he is so dedicated. So after all of that training and discipline, we have in commercial aviation, American, USA registered airplanes. You have all that engineering, all that groundwork that goes along with keeping our airplanes safe. We have millions of little parts and big parts in these airplanes. They go blasting off at hundreds of miles an hour into, in this country, the world's worst weather, or at least in North America, has the world's worst weather. And that's what these pilots have to fly in and be skilled in. And no matter how good the air traffic control is, no matter how good the airplane is, how well it's inspected, it comes down to one thing. It's only as good as the pilot who's flying it. And therefore, in my estimation, there is no greater accomplishment in at least the United States, today's level of aviation. We have now a record that is unbelievable. We are going on 8 years without a single loss of life on a US certified airline anywhere in the world. And when you look at the threats that we have in the world today and all of the ugly things that are happening, to have that accomplishment, not even serious injuries, by the way, in any airliner, we do this so well that it's mind-boggling. No other country does it that well, and no other country has the level of pilots that we do. And now you'll get to meet one. And I want to tell you, nobody could fit the image of an airline captain better than Ted Orris.
Gretchen's told you a lot about Ted the pilot. I'm going to tell you a little bit of the personal side of Ted. I was his guidance counselor for 3 years at Riverside, so I got to know him pretty well. And I got to know a lot of stories. I've edited most of them. But one of the things I remember was that as a senior, he had a car. And he was so proud when he came in to tell me he had this car. And then the next thing I heard, he had a fender bender. And then not long after that, he had another one. And I don't think it ended there, but I didn't keep count. But I thought to my head, and we're going to put this kid in an airplane and let him fly in the sky? Another thing that Ted did when he was at, and before I lose that, as a commercial pilot, for 31 years, he has not had a near miss or an accident, so he must have gotten all those fender benders out of the way in high school. He performed in all of Mr. Shaner's, those of you who are older graduates remember Mr. Shaner, all of his plays. One year he had to borrow one of my husband's suits because he didn't have any of his own, and Larry was the same height, so he could perform a specific role. But what I really remember about Ted was that he was always focused on what he wanted to do. As Gretchen said, he knew he wanted to be an airline pilot. People tried to dissuade him, or at least tell him that there were obstacles because of his height and the height of the cockpit, because he wears glasses, but he never let that deter him. And as you know, he went to Kent State. He did get his instructor's license. He's taught people to fly. One of his crowning achievements that's a final imprint at Riverside, at least as long as it stands, is that he organized the campaign to have the Board of Education name the auditorium in honor of David W. Shaner. So I think it's very fitting that he's going to have his own plaque on the wall in the Hall of Fame. I could tell you many other things that he does. He remodels houses, he buys houses and transforms them into gorgeous houses and then sells them. He volunteers his time mentoring future pilots. He helps his mom and her friends at the villages. He's just kind of a wonderful guy. So it's with great honor that I have Dave Bill present the plaque to you.
Okay, so is this on? Normally, I am.
Nope, it's on.
What'd you do, turn it?
Hold it the whole time?
No, let go.
I'm not very good with electronic devices.
Unless they're
Cockpit
playing.
instrumentation.
I don't really need it. I have the pipes, I can talk without it. Does it work?
You got it, yes.
Okay. Okay, so normally I'm seated. I currently have to face this way. I'm just going to set it down. Normally I'm seated facing the other way in the pointy end of the stick, so I don't usually have to look at people when I talk, so if you don't mind, I'm just going to... But not really. Before I forget, I'd like to thank everyone for this honor. It's totally unexpected. I'm truly humbled by even being considered for this. I have the incredible fortune to be able to do a job that a lot of people do as a hobby and actually get paid to go to work and do it. Flying is something that's just incredibly amazing. If you've ever done it before, if you've ever actually been able to get the controls of an airplane, it's not like anything else, certainly not like driving. And as you probably heard, I wasn't so good. 3 accidents, a speeding ticket in 11 months. In my senior year, my parents can tell you that after the third one, the insurance company dropped the entire family. I was on my own. I started walking and riding bicycles for a couple of years. That didn't work out too well. First bicycle, I crashed at the Casement Airport on the runway, riding down the runway, broke my hand, stitches in my head. Next bicycle was stolen at Kent State, so I thought, you know what, this flying thing ought to work out. So I gave that a try, and so far it's been pretty good. So I'd like to thank my parents especially. My dad's gone now, but my mom's still here. Thanks, Mom, for supporting me and letting me go to Kent State and get into a program like that, even though I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it work or not. Because my Uncle Ted, my mom's brother, World War II era Navy pilot, told me you can't be an airline pilot with glasses. In the 50s, that was probably true when he was doing things. But I thought, I'm just going to go see what happens. So thanks, Uncle Ted. Thanks for pushing me a little bit because I thought I'm going to do it. And right before he died, about 15 years or so ago, he told me, I can't believe you did it. So for me, I feel incredibly lucky that I was able to do that. I also like to thank my Uncle Richie, who is also here today. He's probably the first guy I ever flew with. Back in the late 60s and early 70s, he took me up, his wife took me up, and that was a big inspiration for me to know somebody that was a pilot and realize that it's something that anyone can do if you really want to try. I live near the Casement Airport, Sidley's Field there in Painesville. Planes are always flying overhead. If you see it, if you're a pilot and you hear noise, they do this. Pilots are always looking up, and I spent a lot of time looking up at the sky. So I was fortunate to be able to be near the Casement Airport and eventually get a job there. I heard Sidley's had an airplane, so I actually got a job on the farm mucking out stalls just to try to work my way into getting a couple rides in their twin-engine airplane, and I was able to do that as well. So I did that kind of during the summers in college. So I was really, like I said, really fortunate to do something that I was able to do. And one last thing for Gretchen Reed, during the ground school course that I took, she also was able to get me up in an airplane. And anytime you can get a kid up there, just to kind of stoke the fire a little bit, boy, that was a great, it was a great tool for me to be able to get up there and see how airplanes work. And I thank you so much for doing that, because when I tell people that I took an aviation class in high school, they're astonished that something like that was offered. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to keep it short. That's about all I have to say.
Okay.
That's for you. For those of you who don't know that are being inducted, this is your plaque. We also get a, okay, there is also a duplicate plaque that goes on the wall. Before I introduce the next person, you see I like to roam around and do other things. Before, I would like to take a moment to introduce the coaches that are here this evening. Every time I've ever talked to a coach, they've said, it's not about winning, although that's very important. these young men grow and mature and become productive members of the society. And I think we have two fine examples of that tonight. But before I introduce them, I'd like to introduce the coaches that are here, which are Clint Keener, please stand, Bill Sarvis, Tony Martini, Joel Wolf, and Ron Wooten. I'm not going to try to tell you everything that Brian Ashworth has done. It's too long, and you can read about it in your little booklet. But I do want to highlight a few of the most significant things. One of the things was that he won the NEC cross-country championship 3 years in a row. That means he started winning as a sophomore in high school. At the time, and I believe still maybe, he is the second sophomore to ever do that. While I never saw Brian compete in cross country, it was too hard for me to watch. I did watch him run track meets, run the 32-meter run. Now, for those of us who are not into meters or are not really sure how long 32 meters is, it's about 4 times around the Riverside track. Some of us who are walkers struggle to make it one time and definitely are falling on our faces the second time, don't even attempt for it. He ran it, and he won consistently. The great thing about watching Brian run was he had the most natural stride. He was easy to pick out. Also, he was usually in the lead or often close, and you knew that he was going to eventually be in the lead. But he also had these long, flowing arms. Where did they go? His senior year was the crowning glory as far as high school was concerned. In cross country, he was undefeated in dual meets and broke the course record and set a new record at the district meet. The team qualified that year, which was 1988, because you know cross country is a fall sport, for a trip to the state, and that was the first time that Riverside's team had gone since 1978. Brian finished 9th in the state that year and received all Ohio honors. He continued his outstanding performance in both track and cross country at the University of Miami, where he also received all Ohio honors, four-year varsity participation, all MAC conference honors, and cross country and track honors. So obviously an extremely outstanding runner. The same discipline and competitiveness that gained him stature in athletics has also carried over into his career, and he has been similarly honored in his career. Brian told me that one of the most important moments in his athletic career was also a fun story. I kind of asked him for this. In 1988, when the cross-country team found out at regionals that they wanted, that they were going to go to state, his coach, Mr. Sarvis, did the gator. That's a dance. Don't you wish we were all there to see that? Maybe he'll demonstrate later. It's a real honor to present Brian Ashworth, class of 1989, for induction into the Athletic Hall of Fame. And I do want to introduce Brian's mother, Donna, his brothers, Ken and Bill, his sisters, Laurel and Chris. If you will all stand. His dad, Dorner, is also deceased, but I know he's looking down on us. And then his wife, Kim, his daughters, Kaylee, Marika, and his son, Derek, as well as all of his friends and family who are here tonight. I think he has the biggest group.
I appreciate this honor. I think looking back over the years, you realize what it really means, kind of looking back. And I was in a decade that was very fortunate. The class of 1989 was a very talented class. We had a lot of athletes, both in football, volleyball, baseball. It was just a loaded class. And that class is what made us strong. I look back at that. It didn't matter what sport you made. One of the defining moments, I remember at a local dual meet. So we're running around the back area of the Riverside property, and the course kind of meandered all the way through, and we had the potholes and all. But I remember we cut through the practice field, and I remember all of a sudden the whole team lined up, football team, and that was kind of a defining moment. I remember, and it was just like, we looked out for each other. My siblings. My older sister, Laurel, she excelled in sports. My brother, he always pushed me. My younger siblings, we always did the sports, whether it was out on the basketball court, whether it was throwing the football in the backyard. We were always active. And so that led us, into a career of being athletic both in junior high and then on into the high school. And when I joined junior high, I remember looking back at it. I was very fortunate. The guy has very strong leadership. Coach McKendrick, a lot of you guys may know him. He was my early track coach, 7th, 8th grade, and his wife, got us started down the right path. The role models was what really made it, the strong foundation. As I went through, I was a football player, 7th, 8th grade. I was all set. 9th grade, I remember going out that summer, loved it, angle ball, just really a lot of fun. And then all of a sudden, one day my life changed. A guy by the name of Ron Schaefer walks up. And he puts his arm around you, and if you all know Coach Schaefer, he puts your arm around you and you just kind of do what he says. And I didn't know him very well at the time, but he walks up and says, "Son, you're not playing football." I just looked at him, nodded, okay. He says, "You're going to run cross country." I said, "Okay." Then I left and I asked him, I said, "What is cross country?" Coach Schaefer said I have to run cross country. So luckily one of my good friends, Chris Burkhardt, was also 9th grade running cross country, and 2 other classmates. And so I felt comfortable. I'm like, I'll go out and try this. And we went out, did a practice, and I realized, wow, the practices are much shorter than football. I'll stick it out. So again, I remember coming out there. I appreciate Coach Keener up there. He was very instrumental in throwing me out to the Wolves. We had a big team back then, and really a quality, outstanding class back then. And really led me in the first couple of years and got me really interested in running, and kind of led me into the Schaefer era. And that kind of led into my, I call it my senior years. And that's when Coach Sarvis came along. And it was kind of a big transition because we had this big team and we kind of funneled down, and some of us were trying to get a little serious, but we started missing some things. And one thing that we kind of lost focus among ourselves, and when Coach Sarvis came along, he brought us back to realize that, man, we could really work hard, but we could have a lot of fun. And that's what really kind of took off, and we really gelled as a team. We were all friends. We all liked to do a lot of stuff, but we always had strong leaders around us. I think that's what really paid off in life. Learning how to do things, but learning how to do it right. I always had role models. My parents were always instrumental, making sure we had everything. We could do sports. We had opportunities in life because of that. So for me, it's about the role model. So now, I'm joking up. As I get older, I look over at my 3 youngins, and And I can tell you it's so much fun looking back and saying, well, what would our coaches do? And that's how I look at it. It's like, let's make it fun. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're first or you're last. You know, it's about, did you have fun? Did you get from point A to point B? So that's how I look back at my career, and I'm really appreciative to the strong foundation that the Beaver clan gave to me. And with closing, I want to finish with one last thing. And over my years, growing up, I always spent a lot of time sitting at a desk in my room, because I also had Mrs. Riley for calculus. And, but I always sat there, and on my right, I had some pictures. And for those who know about the Brian decade, on the right was a guy by the name of Brian Carlton. Then on my left, I had these pictures, and it was a guy by the name of Brian Massler. So they grew up and graduated in 1980 and then 1985. So when I came along, I was just another Brian. So it was they set the bar, and so it was always fun, kind of trying to live up to the Riverside era. And I look back at it, and luckily I had the opportunity to meet Brian Carlton 2 years ago. He also was a Miami University graduate, and he was probably the idol that I grew up looking at. He owns all the school records, and when I learned a couple years ago what a class act, and he was he said about everything I said. He looked back and he says it was the foundation that was laid that led him down his path, and so we had a good weekend looking back at that, thinking back to all the quality teachers, the coaches, and the way we do things in life. And I think that's pretty important. And I really appreciate everything that the Alumni Association has done for us, all the nice things you've said, but we really appreciate what you're doing. So thank you.
Right there. I'll take two of them. One,
Two.
two. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, before I introduce Craig, well, and he's very blessed. Both his parents are here tonight. His dad, Gary, and his mom, Karen, if they would please stand, along with his sisters, Tessa and Debbie, and his brother, Greg, his wife, Tricia, and his daughter, Brooke, his sons, Wyatt and John, and then all of the other friends and family and coaches who are here to support Craig. Please stand. Please stand. Thank you. As you know, Craig was a 3-year letterman, like Brian. But Craig was in two very unrelated sports. Baseball, you know, that's the one where they hit with a bat, don't they? And basketball, that's that round thing that goes in the basket. And if you're Craig, you can probably dunk it, but somebody short certainly can't. So it was an unusual accomplishment for Craig to be able to letter as a sophomore, as a junior, and as a senior. And nowadays at Riverside, that's almost impossible. First of all, because many of the students can't afford to play more than one sport. Now, with the passing of the levy, hopefully that will change. But for the last 10 years or so, it's been very, very difficult to be involved in more than one sport. So that's a record of its own. However, it was basketball where Craig really starred. He had, again, in the booklet, it tells you everything. I'm just going to highlight a few things, like the fact that he had multiple MVP awards, captain's honors, NEC Player of the Year. His senior year, he was both Plain Dealer and News Herald Player of the Year. These show how widely acknowledged his talents were. And then he continued at Mercyhurst, where he also lettered for 4 years, was a starter for 4 years, and 1,000 points. 1,000 points. Can you imagine? Can you conceive of 1,000 points? At Riverside, beside his athletic prowess, he also served on student council and senior council, and maybe a little hint that he was going into law enforcement. He was a hall monitor. He would chase down the delinquents running through the halls, or those who didn't have properly signed passes. He was also a gym leader and a floor sweeper, hall sweeper. Those of us in the know that that was really a get-out-of-study hall free pass. Also, he related to me that one day, or maybe more than one day, he helped the home ec teacher unload the groceries from her car and bring them into Riverside. This was before Riverside was joined with John R. So there was a driveway there. And she drove her car up, and Craig unloaded the cars, and then Craig drove her car back and parked it in the parking lot. I don't think that would happen today either. Craig has pursued an impressive career in law enforcement, starting with the Cedarville Police Department. I know he was with the Lake County Sheriff's Department often for a long time. I saw him on a couple of occasions in his neat uniform, and then I'd see him casually because he was a detective and who knows what he was doing. Then he tried the private sector with Key Corp and doing some investigating for them, and now he is back as a patrolman for the Chester Township Police Department. He continues to love sports, coaching and mentoring young athletes. He is a past varsity coach for the Kensington School Board, and today I found out he is going to be assisting the new Riverside High School basketball coach this season. So it is with great pleasure that I present Craig Young, class of 1993.
Apparently I'm the only one with notes. Can everybody hear me? I won't use the microphone.
The camera can't hear you, though.
Okay,
Thank you.
then I will use the microphone. Is it on?
Yes, it is.
Just to correct you a little bit, Mrs. Lewis actually let me drive her car up and back. Mrs. Riley made sure to say we keep this around 5 minutes, so I'm going to be liberal with her interpretation of 5 minutes. Hopefully I don't go too long. I just wanted to thank the Riverside Alumni Association. What a great job you all have done. Everybody here, what a great night this is. You know, I look out and I see so many familiar faces. It's crazy for me. It's like a class reunion. And, you know, I'm just glad that Kenny drove up and his family from Greenville to come see me tonight. Appreciate that. Everybody who comes up here, they say what an honor it is, and it is. What a great honor. You know, for me, it's more than that. Riverside truly is hallowed ground for me. When I think back to my high school experience, it's the best times I ever had. And I think there's a bunch of reasons for that. And I think the biggest reason is now it's all responsibility. I have kids, all I do is kid stuff and work. Back then it was simple. It was a simpler time. The 80s and 90s were a simpler time. And it was just truly the best time of my life. And you know, when I think about it, I'm up here for athletic achievements. But Riverside High School wasn't athletics just to me, it was the people. That's what I remember. I remember the people, I remember the administrators, I remember the students, I remember the coaches. And that's truly what I remember about high school. You know, when I thought about it and I thought, I'm getting inducted to the Hall of Fame, I think about Riverside, immediately I thought of Carol Lewis. And I know a lot of you guys know who Carol Lewis was. She was the home ec teacher. Now, I don't look like a home ec guy. Matter of fact, when she did the child development classes, I literally turned around and wouldn't watch. But she tolerated me, and we have been lifelong friends, and she sent me a card this week to congratulate me. And it's those bonds that you make with people at Riverside that truly matter. And she's just one example. You know, I look out here tonight, and Tony Montanini's sitting over there. I never had Tony for class, and he says he was a great history teacher. I don't know because I never had him. He tells me all the time. But he's one of my best friends. He's over at my house last night. You know, it's these bonds. I never even had him for class, and we're great friends. But that's, you know, that's what Riverside was to me. And, you know, it wasn't just athletics, it was the people. And, you know, with that said, I'm here being honored for athletics. And a bunch of coaches out there, you know, that have meant a lot to me. My first coach was my dad. And as I've told my family tonight, I can't talk about my family a whole lot because I get too emotional. So they're probably going to get the short end of the stick on tonight's speech. But my dad was my first coach. And, you know, I coach a lot of youth programs. And I see a lot of youth coaches today. And I'm not overly thrilled. They all think their kid is truly going to Division I. They are going to be a pro athlete. They have no concept of what it takes to get there. My dad was the exact opposite of that. You talk about grounding you as a player. He was such a great example of how to be a sports parent. You know, he never criticized me. He was always quiet, supportive, and supportive to a fault. But he was not up there yelling. He was not up there complaining. He was exactly what you want in a sports parent. He expected me to carry myself a certain way on the basketball court, on the baseball field, and that was the only time. If I didn't, I would hear about it. But my dad, I guess the best example of what my dad was is, you know, I'm a coach, and it is so rare for somebody to have this quality. My dad never one time criticized a coach or a player, and that's rare. I mean, all parents and all coaches want to say it's not little Timmy's fault. They want to criticize everybody else. My dad never one time in my life did I ever hear him criticize a coach or say anything bad about a coach or a parent. And that's a true attribute to him and, you know, to the legacy he passed down for me. And that's just how I try to live my life with what he gave me. My mom, very similar to my dad. She was quiet and supportive to a fault. But my mom, she was a little more vocal about things she didn't like. So, a couple examples of my mom. She's hiding her face up there. I promise they're good stories. When I was in 9th grade, my freshman and sophomore years, I could dunk a basketball. And it was a pretty big deal to be able to dunk a basketball in the 90s. And I never dunked because one thing my mother could not stand was showboating and arrogant players. And she would tell me over and over again, never bring attention to yourself. It's a team game, do not bring attention to yourself. So I never dunked a basketball because she convinced me that that's showboating. And that if I did that on the court, she would let me hear about it when I got home. So my whole freshman and sophomore years, I never dunked, and I had lots of opportunities to do it, and all the kids were asking me why I didn't do it, and it's because of my mom. And so, one time, I can't remember if it was Coach Winton or Coach Jordan, they went up to my mom, because I told them, they asked me, why aren't you dunking? I said, because my mom won't let me. All true. And they went up and it convinced my mom that it's actually an important part of the game. So she gave me permission to dunk, so then I could dunk after that. But that's how my mom was, you know. She was pretty adamant that you don't bring attention to yourself. So I didn't do that. Another quick funny mom story. My 8th grade season, she knows exactly what I'm talking about. My 8th grade season, we were playing Hobart Junior High School, the Painesville City School. And I was sick all day long at school. I felt miserable. I mean, really miserable. And the game starts, and I'm playing, and first break, I think it was, I tell my coach, I'm like, I feel horrible. I gotta come out of the game. So I check myself out of the game, and I'm sitting there, and I turn around, and I look back at my parents. And my dad's watching the game, but I can feel these eyes through me. And I look back at my mom, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. She's looking at me, and she points her finger, and she says, get back in the game. And she was so mad at me because I dare take myself out of a basketball game. So I told the coach, I said, it's a miracle, I'm healed. Put me back in. So I went back in, I played pretty well, and then I got home and I had 102 temperature and I missed 2 days of school. That's my mom. You start something, you finish what it is you started. And important lessons I learned from her because she would never let me come out of the game. You know, what do you say about your parents? You know, I mean, again, I'll get choked up if I say any more, so I figured I'd tell a couple funny stories and be done with it. But everything I am today is because of them. So that's really all I can say about that. On the same topic of coaches, you know, I've had a lot of coaches in my life. Earl Kiger's no longer with us, all the way up through, but there's really one coach that stands out, you know, and there's really not even a close second, and that's Rob Winton. You know, Coach Winton, his first year was 1989, and I remember that because it was my brother Gary's senior season. And I was in 8th grade, and I saw this guy, and he was younger, obviously. He had that mustache, and he was a big guy. I'll never forget going to the first games, and he is just smashing clipboards and kicking the bleachers and going crazy. And I'm sitting there looking at him like, oh my God, I got to play for this guy. And I was petrified of him. And you know, it was one of those things where I was like, I don't know if I can play for a guy this, you know, he's a pretty passionate guy. And that's what he is, he's passionate. My first perception of Coach couldn't be further from the truth. And, you know, he was a teacher, first and foremost. And everything of value I learned in basketball, I can honestly say I learned from him. You know, a lot of X's and O's stuff I might have learned from other people, but truly what the game is about and what it's supposed to be about, I learned from him. And I guess Coach loved his players more than the game. And I think that's what makes a good coach. You know, the game's always going to be there. You're going to have wins and losses. You're going to have good seasons and bad seasons. He loved his players more than he loved the game. And really the most important thing that I learned from Coach was that the game's fun. You know, I've had coaches in college, it was a business. It was not fun. You know, you're a contract, the college is paying for you to go there. And now you're not, it's not about fun anymore. And Coach, the best times I ever had playing sports was because of Coach Winton at Riverside High School. He made the sport fun. And that's all you can ask for as a player, is to have fun playing the sport. Quick funny story about Coach though, he probably doesn't remember this. He was pretty violent with inanimate objects, bleachers and stuff. So we had a chalkboard in the locker room, and at halftime, when he was giving his quiet suggestions of how we should be playing in the second half, this chalkboard paid the price for it. It had, you know, fist marks, and it had gotten pounded pretty good. And we all just laughed about it, because here's this chalkboard that he has, you know, punched numerous times because we're morons. High school kids are morons, and we deserve it. I can't remember what year it was. I'm sitting in pregame, and there's this beautiful new chalkboard. And I'm sitting there and I'm laughing to myself. I'm like, what are they thinking? Like, why would you buy this guy a brand new chalkboard? And all of us players are looking at each other like, really? Lasted 2 games. Should have went with the old chalkboard. They made it better because that new one, it's retired. It's buried somewhere. But, you know, that's what a lot of people saw Coach. They didn't see what Coach really was. And, you know, just to say he meant a lot to my life is a complete understatement. And again, it's about relationships for me, and it's about relationships in life. And you talk about what a relationship I have with people in here. But you know, Coach Winton, in probably one of his bigger lapses in judgment, hired a couple of us idiots to paint with him in the summers, former players, and myself and Kenny Ashworth over here, and Tony and his boys, Rob and Brad, and his dad, Doug, who's, you talk about a great human being. And we paint together in the summers. And as you've heard, I've done a lot in my profession, you know, with law enforcement. That was the best job I ever had. Without question, the best job I ever had was painting with these guys. And the funny thing is, I could stand up here for hours and tell stories. You know it. I could tell stories for hours. But I won't. I'll move on. You know, again, I'm going to try and keep this as short as I can, but I look at all these familiar faces. My family's in the back, and thank God they're in the back. But my sister Treza, you know, 10 years older than me, but I mean, what can you say about her? She has a heart of gold. Debbie, sitting next to her, she's much closer, you know, living in Concord. She's still involved with the Riverside system with, you know, her children going to school there. My brother Gary, who's my best friend, sitting right there in the front. You know, we do everything together. And I can thank him especially because he's the one who just beat the living tar out of me growing up. I mean, literally beat the living tar out of me many times. Family is the most important thing that there possibly is. And to have this support from these guys up here is just, it's amazing. They've always been there for me, they're always going to be there for me, and that's one thing I never have to doubt. So having them here tonight is really special. And then lastly, my wife Tricia and my children, Brooke, Johnny, and Wyatt. I think they're more excited about tonight than I am. Especially my daughter, she got to get all dressed up. You know, sports, you come full circle with things. And I was a kid, I played sports, my dad coached me. Now I'm a dad, and I coach my kids. And, you know, I played sports, it was great. Coaching and watching my kids play sports is off the charts. They frustrate the living tar out of me, but at the end of the day, I would much rather coach and watch my kids than play sports any day of the week. Sports teaches you values, it teaches you a lot about life. It's not so much the sport, it's what you learn from it. And hopefully I'm trying to teach my kids that. So, again, thank you to the Alumni Association, everybody that came out tonight, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
One more.
For the last and final group, we have Mike Vaccariello, and I'd like for his dad, Mr. Frank Vaccariello, and his brother is already standing, he's been standing all night. And then for his wife Sheila, and his sons Vinny, and Jimmy, and Will, and then the rest of the family and friends that are here to support Mike. Please stand.
It in many ways is difficult to speak about just Mike because he comes from a family that has given much to this community and continues to do so. But Mike, in his own right, has earned being a part of this Hall of Fame for his honesty, integrity, and endurance in a very difficult position for anyone because it's government, and that is to be a treasurer in a school system, in fact, 2 school systems. So Mike is being inducted in the faculty and staff category, but he is also an alumnus and continues to serve the school in many different ways. After his graduation from KSU with a bachelor's degree in accounting, he earned a CPA at Kent and was in private industry for quite a while as serving as a senior accountant, and meanwhile being very active with the school. His loyalty to the school includes founding, or at least being a part of the founders of the Riverside Marching Band, the impetus behind it, and the voice of the Riverside Regiment. He was president and treasurer of the Alumni Association and assistant treasurer of the Band Boosters. The complexity of school finance is what makes Mike stand out. School finance is more than balancing books, and his were always perfect, audits, etc. But in addition to that, we have communities who are ready to land on the backs of any person in the financial sector of a school system who doesn't balance things out or who shows the slightest discrepancies in what the finances are. And this was something Riverside never had to worry about. One glitch in the finances and you open up all kinds of problems that can lead into questions about expenditures, about the honesty and integrity of the system, And you know where this is going, levy failures. And that is something we never worried about with Mike. He was nominated for the Hall of Fame by Kelly Minnick, who was our supervisor of nutrition at the schools. And she spoke of his integrity, his open door policy, and being willing to talk to anyone at any time concerning not only what he did, but what he expected of other people who worked with him. And he was named the most valuable administrator by the School Nutrition Association of Ohio. So along with the services and the contributions of an indigenous family in this community that has served and continues, Brother Frank back there, giving his whole evening to our purposes, and Mike still serving in various capacities in the school as athletic, in athletic leagues, youth athletic leagues, etc. Please welcome Mike.
Craig, I've got notes. No one mentioned all of my athletic accomplishments at the high school, so I'm going to take a minute now to list them all. Want to hear them again? First, congratulations to Joel, Ted, Brian, and Craig on being inducted tonight. You're all incredibly deserving, and I'm honored to be inducted with such a great group. There are many people I need to thank, because without them, I wouldn't be up here tonight. First, I'd like to thank the Riverside Alumni Association for being chosen for induction. I am honored and humbled by being selected. I'm guessing that most, if not all of us being inducted tonight, did what we did to get inducted because we loved doing it. Not because of the Hall of Fame, not because the Hall of Fame was our ultimate goal. But it's nice to be recognized for our accomplishments. Next, my family, and I'm not going to make them stand, I was warned. All Riverside graduates, by the way, my lovely wife Sheila, my boys Willie, Jimmy, and Vinny. Being the treasurer where my boys lived, where we lived, where my kids went to school wasn't always easy. The boys put up with me knowing every day what they did in school and knew some of the decisions that I made as treasurer would affect them. I always tell the story of the one time at dinner. I sat down and I can't remember which of the three it was. I said, so how was your chicken sandwich today? How did you know I had a chicken sandwich? I said, keep that in mind. I know what you have every day. My dad, who is here tonight, and my mom, who passed away 2 years ago, thank you both. It was my mom that suggested I apply for the position, and it was my dad who convinced me that I could do about half of what was listed on the job description, and said if I got the job, I'd better learn how to do the other half pretty quick. So after 9 years of public accounting, I made a career change, and Sheila supported it. She has put up with the late night board meetings, the levy meetings, negotiations, and everything else that took time away from her and the family. I need to thank the Board of Education that hired me. They took a risk of hiring a 30-year-old with no school district experience to lead the financial operations of the district. Their directive to me when I was hired was to restore confidence in the treasurer's office. I think it worked out okay. Kelly Minnick, who couldn't be here tonight, thanks for nominating me. Kelly and I have worked together for most of the last 21 years in all the districts she serves and the two that I've served. But for those that you don't know, Kelly Minnick is the absolute best school nutrition service director in the state of Ohio. I had to say that. I texted her and told her I would. The final group of individuals that need to be thanked are those staff members that work with me, as I like to say, for the 15 years at Riverside. They were the ones that did all the work and made me look good. And I did tell them that every now and then. Without all those people I mentioned, I wouldn't be up here tonight. I always considered being the treasurer of the district where Sheila, my boys, my brothers, my sister, both brother-in-laws, and I graduated, my hometown and where I still live, more than a job, it was a responsibility. I took that responsibility seriously every day. I once told the Board of Education during one of my evaluations that they don't have to worry about me doing anything wrong. The worst they could do is fire me. My folks still live in the district and they will disown me. The other stuff that was listed that I was involved in, it was just to make the district better. The alumni band, started that because I wanted a place where former board members could relive marching Friday night under the lights, even if it was only for one night a year. Parents are able to stand next to their son or daughter and experience halftime from the field with them. I mean, how cool is that? If you haven't done it, we'll get you an instrument. Come out and stand with the kids. As I tell them, it doesn't matter if you know how to play. There's 200 kids behind us that know what they're doing. We can fake it with the best of them. I've been able to work with two great band directors in those 25 years of alumni band. Both are here tonight, Tom Deep and David Schwartz. The other three directors that are here, they're okay too. They wore their matching ties that I got them when we all marched down Main Street in Disney, and I opted for this one because I wanted to look like the leader of the group. The voice of the regiment, actually, let me do that because I'm used to talking that way also. It was more of an honor to be the voice than it was a chore. When my oldest son, Will, was a freshman, Dave Schwartz asked me to announce for the band, and I said no. He responded, okay, we just won't have an announcer this year. So what was I to do? Allow silence during the band portion, so I signed on. And for 9 years, I got to watch the best band in Northeast Ohio from high up on the press box. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? I'm going to say I do miss it. This is the second year not announcing, and I kind of miss it. Alumni Association president, this was time well spent, just giving back to my alma mater. I mean, you've heard from the other four what Riverside meant to them, and it meant the same to me. There was a need, I took my turn. So thanks again for inducting me. I will forever cherish having my name hanging in the hall with all of the other members. Go Beavers. Got it?
I guess Gabby has closing remarks.
Kept it short. Good, you kept it short. We got
close the evening, I decided I wanted to get personal because I do have an acquaintance with these five gentlemen. So I'm going to start with the elder statesman, Ted. He decided, and he knew well ahead, that he wanted to become the airline pilot, and he needed the calculus, but he didn't have the trig. So he wanted to take both classes at the same time. Well, my experience when I got to college, I didn't have the trig either. And I suffered through my year of calculus in college. So I said, Ted, it's going to be hard, but if you want to give it a try, go ahead. So there's Ted in 2 periods a day in my classroom. Another period in study hall. Another time in homeroom. I saw that young man 4 times a day. Then came Joel, who also decided that he needed the calculus. And you heard his story. He had Mr. Perot for trig, and then me for the calculus. Those are the only two fellows in all the years that I taught calculus who were brave enough to try that and succeed at it. So gentlemen, thank you very much for doing that. Brian, second row from the door, first seat. Am I right? Yeah. Okay, he was there every day. But the part I really remember is I owe you a thank you. I don't know why, but when you were at Miami, Coach McKendrick was down there on a weekend. Do you remember him visiting? Yes, the head is bobbing. Coach asked him, what's the one thing that you remember about Riverside that has really benefited you? I'm not here to get the glory tonight, but he gave me a compliment, and I just want to thank him, because as teachers, we need to hear those things once in a while. I really appreciated it. So thank you very much, Brian, for sending that message back. Craig, you get off easy. Didn't have you in class, but I do remember this tall dude walking down the hallway with a big smile on his face all the time. However, I do remember your brother Gary and your sister Debbie. I'm sorry, Tressa, I didn't have you. Sorry. Okay, then there's Mike. Well, I do remember him in band because I was involved with the cheerleaders and the dance team and the majorettes through those years. So I do remember him as a band member, but I really remember him as really one of my bosses. That was kind of difficult at first. He's giving us all these rules that we have to follow in activity accounts. He kept track of us okay. We both survived all those years in there, but he really kept track of all the money in there. And then we also owe him the big thank you, because after John parted from the activity with the Alumni Association, Mike picked that up and kept the Alumni Association going. So we probably wouldn't be here today with this event if Mike hadn't kept going with it back then. So thank you for doing that. And then for starting the alumni band, as we've already heard, and being the voice of the regiment all of those years. Is that Mike doing that announcing tonight? Sure enough, it was Mike up there in the press box. Okay, but this is what I'm really looking at tonight. If you really think about it, all 5 of these fellows are not only child in their family. They have other brothers and sisters. So how did they make all of these, or succeed at what they were doing all these years when there are other people in the family that are going to get the same amount of recognition? Who do we go to? The parents. And that's who we also have to really thank tonight, is the parents of all 5 of these fellows. I'm looking at the concession stand. I'm looking at Frank and Pauline running the popcorn machine all those years. Then comes Mike and Sheila working in the concession stand while the boys are in school, doing the same thing. There are the Youngs back there. I kidded them tonight, where are their cushions that they are always carrying when they come to the games? They're now on the next generation of the grandchildren, but they're there supporting the family the whole time. That's what we need to see. Oh, Mrs. Ashworth, thank you for keeping at least one of the Ashworths in Lake County for us. You took the rest of them with Southern Ohio or out of state, but at least we have one left in Lake County. As a matter of fact, in the school district, right? Yep. The 2 kids are going to Riverside, so we'll have some more history coming from the Ashworth clan. Okay, the Percivals back there. Oh, I have to tell you a personal story. When Jim was in the 7th grade, Jim was in the 7th grade, football game, you know, they're right after school. Dad was coming late to the football game. Well, he was teaching also, so he showed up kind of late. Well, all of a sudden, Jim turned around, and there's Dad walking up into the stands. He didn't care what was going on in the field anymore. He was glad that his father was here to watch what was going on, the parent involvement in the family. Very important to all of these people. Well, it kind of winds up my personal history about what was going on. I've been around for so many years, I guess I can tell some of those stories that these two ladies have also told. But to wrap this up again, thank you so much for coming. These are 5 fine gentlemen that we are recognizing tonight. We hope you enjoyed it. If you can think of some more people, we have some nomination forms over here on the table. Please stop and think about picking up one, and maybe down the road you can nominate somebody. Also, a final plug about joining the Alumni Association, $25 lifetime membership, but we can also use your help with our projects that we have during the year. And the painting, the print, black and white print by Sue Chafee, who was one of the elementary art teachers, but she's also a Riverside graduate and well known in Lake County for the drawings that she does of the different buildings. That helps support the Alumni Association as well. Well, to all of you, we hope you have enjoyed this evening. Please have a safe trip home, and good night to all of you. Thank you.